Derek. We had my friends Cathy Little and Melinda Wilson on Face-to-Face Ministries. Have known them for about 10 years, and we've been traveling in the same direction and stayed connected over the years through different organizations and mutual friends. But so thankful for them, so thankful for what they're doing. They're deep, deep wells of the love of God, but also knowledgeable about wholeness and holistic thinking and inner healing.
Yeah.
This was good.
It was real good, and particularly the Emmanuel approach to as a modality for healing is going to fire up a lot of our listeners to say, hey, I want to be a part of that. And so just terminology and language about you're encountering your own heart in order to encounter God's. They do these getaways, these dash away events for women all over the world, really. And then I see this as a stream of healing that our listeners are going to get a hold of and start swimming in. I've been binging their podcasts, and so I can tell you I am definitely all in on these two. I mean, Melinda and Cathy were absolutely delightful.
Yeah, it was. They really are the real deal, and the liberty with which they share. Convinced in the goodness of God, convinced that we are loved absolutely and completely. It was a good conversation, man. We went everywhere. We talked about our nature. We talked about our new nature or our original design, and all of it towards wholeness, all of it towards a better understanding of who God is and who we are. So good stuff.
Yeah, I really feel like some of the practical aspects of what they're going to be talking about and leading people into is going to cause all of our listeners to become their listeners, and we would love nothing more than people to partake of that.
And
so,
I'm holding in book Streams of Healing, which is really cool, and they talk about that as well. But yeah, I agree. I'm excited to introduce the Tacos podcast listener to these guys. Amazing.
Yep, here they are, Melinda and Cathy.
We're good. This is good. Hey, Cathy Little and Melinda Wilson, my friends. It's good to have you on the podcast. I've been on yours a few times. I've been telling Derek about you guys, and this is good. Face to face. We are actually face to face talking to the two women who have face to face ministries. I was telling Derek, we met, it's been at least 10 years.
Probably close to that. Yeah.
And through mutual friends. And of course we have lots of new mutual friends, but you guys were coming through town. You'd launched your ministry, I think in 2013. So right around that time. Mm-hmm. And we kind of connected around the goodness of God and our shared journey and these mutual friends. And then we're a part of the same fellowship for a period of time, have stayed connected. And I'm real excited that you're here. I'm excited to introduce Rethinking God with Tacos podcast listeners to you guys. I actually think a lot of them already know who you are. We've had a lot of similar guests. We kind of are chasing down some of the same truths, the goodness of God, ever expanding in our hearts. But go ahead and introduce yourselves, however you want to start. Cathy, if you want to start, or Melinda, however.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jason and Derek. It's a joy to be here. It's a little awkward to be on the other side of the interview, though, I got to say, because we're used to being the ones asking questions, but it's fun to be on Rethinking God with Tacos. And we tell a lot of people about your podcast, and I know we've shared a lot of guests along the way, but I am Cathy Little, co-director of Face-to-Face Ministries, and super honored to be with y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm Melinda, and it is not awkward for me at all. So Cathy, please speak for yourself and don't say we, because give me a mic, give me a camera, and you just have to maybe stop me. So I'm perfectly comfortable, and I'm like, heck yeah, that means I get to talk more than I listen. That doesn't happen very often when you're in ministry. And when you are doing the podcast and interviewing people, you're listening. And I'm a very good listener, by the way.
Yes, you are.
But it's actually like, yay, an opportunity to share what I'm passionate about. I am super excited and really honored. I don't love that it's on video. I actually joked, I'm like, you're videoing us because our podcast, we see each other on the platform, but we don't put their faces on video, and people will come in and like, am I going to be on video? I'm like, we'll see you, but we're not broadcasting it. So I'm telling you how awesome I think you guys must be for me to actually give permission to say, yes, put it on YouTube. That's fine. And if I'm shiny, it's because I don't have my makeup artist here and it's 81 degrees in my office currently.
Hey,
I have to give the
I just want to say I don't have my makeup artist here either today. Completely absent.
I think we share the same one. And
Right.
she quit. I don't know why. I
don't get it. I love it. Let's start there then. Melinda, share a little bit about maybe what you guys do, your passion, and maybe it'd be good to introduce the ministry a little bit. So do that, and let's kind of start there, and then we'd love to hear some of the rethinking stuff too. So,
well, face-to-face ministries, it really is, without giving the whole history of it, it really is about helping people encounter the Lord face to face. And what does that even mean? Like,
right.
You can't see Jesus and die. The Old Testament says that, or you can't see God. And but we also at the same time sing a song like "Open the Eyes of My Heart that I may see you." I'm like, well, are you singing that? But then you're saying that we can't see God. So I kind of help challenge people in what they're saying, because I really believe that what we say doesn't necessarily line up with what we believe. And what we say sometimes is just what we know, but we don't actually believe it. That's a whole other thing. But really, it's about helping people not only encounter the living, interactive, tangible, personal friendship presence of Jesus, but also helping people encounter their own heart. I mean, that's what I'm personally, Melinda, passionate about.
Yeah.
The second piece of that.
Yeah.
But you can't have one without the other, honestly.
That's good.
And so we do it in a really simple way. It doesn't have to be complicated. That's the beautiful part of, I believe, of using a brain science piece, is that all of our brains are created equal, no matter your age, gender, socioeconomic background, cultural background, and our brains operate the same way. And because it is a platform is brain science, everyone can encounter this living, interactive presence of Jesus, whether they're a quote unquote Christian or not. And so that's what we do in a very small nutshell, is help people encounter Jesus, which brings, if they're open to it, transformation and healing at a very deep heart level.
One of the things that you'll notice when you get around Melinda and I is that we're both very different. And she just got done describing beautifully like the whole heart and passion of what we do. And so I'm thinking about some of the ways that we do that. So our goal is to raise up an army of heart healers with healed hearts, because you can't lead someone where you haven't been, right?
Yeah.
So we want to identify, train, equip, nurture, and deploy heart healers that are fully ready and equipped with their own heart healing, emotional maturity, and a solid grasp on the Emmanuel Approach model, which is the modality that we use, and to be able to deploy them and nurture them so that they are very effective in being able to minister to those around them. So a big part of what we do is training and developing, but we're also doing that in the context of community. And then in addition to that, we also have some events that we do that are encounter-based for those that just want to come and connect with Jesus, and they may not necessarily want to train in the tools. But we're very passionate about helping people to come into a deeper revelation of not only who God is, but who they are.
Right. These are called Dash Away weekends, right?
They are, yes. And we're having 39 and 40 coming up in a couple of weeks in the UK. So this is our 10-year anniversary doing them. And we have had hundreds of ladies come to that event, and just finished up 38 in Lake Tahoe. And now we're heading over to UK, where we've done 15 of the events, but number 39 and 40 are going to be back in the UK. So it's
Wow.
really
Tell
a
us
beautiful full circle
what is
celebration
someone
for
going
us
to
being our 10-year
encounter
anniversary.
at a Dash Away weekend? Can you
And I
kind
will
of give
this
us a little rundown on what people could expect if they want to attend one? Because we'd like to steer people that direction.
Yeah, so it is for women only at this point. We've had a lot of guys say they'd love to have something like that, but we invite a smaller group of women, usually no more than about 20, and it's an intimate setting in a beautiful location because we really believe that being surrounded by creation and beauty is a great way to be in touch with the Creator. They're very much geared around encountering Jesus with we do some fun stuff to kind of get people relaxed. We have times of intimate worship. We have some optional things that people can do, whether it be to receive a one on one ministry session for themselves, if we have the personnel there to do that, some interactive labyrinth prayer journey that people can also take advantage of. And Melinda does some content in the morning that gives them some tools to do some things on their own. It's really not a complicated retreat, but it's amazing the impact that it has because we're just holding space. We're setting the table and holding space. The ladies come and Jesus feeds.
I love the face to face. I grew up in the charismatic church, and I think that's probably at least where we've connected. I know that I don't know if those are your roots, but those are certainly mine. But we use the language relational. I'm a relational theologian or a practical theologian. If you're relational and you're a worship leader and you're about face to face encounter, then you're constantly discovering who he is, and you're constantly pulling junk off your lens that would cut you off from deeper connection or deeper encounter, which is, I think, why I find myself where I am today. Because I'm wired to go, hey, there's something on my lens that kept me from being able to access who he was in this area. I need to understand how to who God really is, and of course, Jesus being perfect theology is the road that we've traveled. For me, face to face encounter has been something I've experienced from age 5 all the way through. I can take you through the moments. Each one of them encounters with his kindness. When you look back in hindsight, it was the goodness of God. It was constantly being reframed and rediscovered. And so we rethink on this podcast. I know you guys have had major shifts in your life. Like, maybe speak to those. What's the major shift that where you have one thought about God and everything changed through this revelation or this rethinking or this encounter? Maybe.
Melinda?
I know you, Cathy, have a deep inner healing radical experience. I read it on your bio.
I just know I talked last, so I wanted to give Melinda the floor. You want me to go, Melinda, or do you want? I grew up in a very independent fundamental Baptist church. So my entire upbringing was very shame based, very retributive, very much a transactional God. I was not really connected to him relationally, other than I didn't want to go to hell when I died, that whole thing. And when I was in college, some things began to shift because I actually went to a Baptist college that gave me permission to actually explore, hey, this is something that we prefer you do as you represent us as an institution. Like, you're a student here, we want you to adhere to these rules, rather than everything is thus saith the Lord. Whereas I had grown up where everything in the Bible was crafted to back whatever rule they decided on based on any given day and whatever. It was a gradual unraveling for me, stepping away from the severity of the shame-based system I grew up in through college. Ended up getting married, moving to Atlanta, ended up in a vineyard church, which is even more exposing me to the goodness of God, more of the kingdom of God and that kind of thing. Uh, and I had a really profound healing journey over the whole shame issue that it took like 3 years to unravel that from me at the core. And it was a life-changing experience for me. I ended up writing a book called Shame on You No More, which is kind of like my journey out of that web. But I didn't realize that that was actually the precursor to an even deeper work, that had I not had that initial exposure to, hey, this is how God really feels about you. And guess what? You cannot alter it no matter what. Like, you have no ability within yourself to cause him to love you less or more than he does in this moment. And if that had not been settled, then this other layer of healing would not have been survivable, in my opinion. I know that I would have taken my life in the middle of it had it not been that I knew that God and I were okay. And that really was the undoing of me, that second half. It's kind of like the part one, part two. And God in his kindness gave me part one so that I could survive part two, which I wouldn't wish on anybody, but I wouldn't trade what God did through it for anything. And it was through that journey that I began to realize more of who I am. It was my own deep inner healing journey. It was me losing everything that could everything except my dog and my car and some possessions. I lost relationships. I lost my job at the church. I was a worship leader, lost credibility, lost my marriage, lost everything. And it was the complete stripping away so that he could reconstruct me from scratch. And so there really is a very clear delineation for me where there's a before and an after. And that after journey sent me into some things I explored, like to become a better worship leader. I did some things with Dan Wilt. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a very contemplative guy in vineyard circles who's done some training. And I did some of the stuff that he was doing, introduced me to Robert Weber and to N.T. Wright. And so I ended up through that landing on the book by N.T. Wright called Surprised by Hope. And that book undid me, undid my eschatology, undid how I view the church, undid how I view God. And from there I just began, I was very hungry, and my journey took many years. Obviously the shack was very profound. Paul is a dear friend of mine as well. Um, the shack undid me. I landed, I had the shack in my hands days after I was fired from my job because of my own personal failure, and that book met me in my darkest night of the soul. So it's been a journey and a process, and an undoing a lot of things I've read, a lot of things that just didn't make sense. And I wasn't really public about it. It's just kind of my own internal processing, but it completely has altered how I view God and how I view me and how he sees me. And it is a complete redoing, and I can't go back. We were talking in the podcast, we just interviewed you a few weeks ago, Jason, and you were talking about how that knowledge of all of that brings you into a measure of freedom. And there is so much more freedom in that because you're not dependent on my behavior. Like God was so fickle. And the thing that makes me crazy is that there's a lot of people in the church who claim to know, love, and serve him, who also believe he's fickle, but they think that's okay.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
He's not
Yeah.
fickle. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, and just the journey. Is funny because some of the stuff that was going on in my own journey, Melinda was watching that very carefully. And yeah, I'll let her share that. But it's like it took a while for us both to catch on and to move forward. But you
Right.
can't go back once you taste it.
There's a phrase in this book, we're going to get to it, but right at the front end, about addressing a divided heart with "give me an undivided heart." And yeah, Cathy, what you're talking about, our ideas of who he is, he separates, he's retributive, leads to division within your own heart. And this is the stuff you guys run at with folks. But Melinda, what's the I read your bio. I haven't actually heard your story. I would share a little bit. Share a little bit about maybe a shift, and then how you met Cathy.
I don't have a dramatic story, although I studied and majored in drama. That's true. That's true. Um, And I used to be envious of people that had a radical testimony of like, I was a heroin addict with my head in the toilet and prostitutes all over me. And then one day I had a, Saul to Paul conversion, and God blew into the bathroom in the gas station and blew apart the toilet. And there I was, totally drug free. I used to, you hear those stories,
Yeah, they're
right? And you're
powerful.
like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't think that's most people. Um, And so I feel like that kind of slow conversion. I don't believe that there's just one moment. For me, there isn't, but I don't even believe it's just one moment for anybody. There's got to be a continual journey of the unfolding. There's no place where we can just put a marker going, that's it, I'm done. And so for me, it's the continual, gradual, because if it was just that's it, I'm done, then we would actually be putting God in a box of this is all there is to know of him, and he's done all the work and that's it. And so that's why I said earlier about being self-aware, is that I'm becoming more and more aware of what I don't know. I'm becoming more and more aware of my own divided heart. And I have gone through kind of radical healing times, but dude, it's not as radical as it is. There's the working out after. It's kind of like having surgery and then thinking that you're just going to get up and run 2 miles after knee replacement surgery. It's that rehab, it's the working it out. And that is the working out your salvation. And that's how I interpret that. And the glory to glory, however you want to interpret that. But I feel like it's been a gradual romance, not a, gosh, love bombing me, so to speak. Like I meet the person and then they send me gifts immediately, and I'm just getting bombarded with love gifts. Now, I'm welcome and open to that. If someone wants, I'll give you my address, but do it anonymously because I won't fall for that. But if you want to send me gifts, that's fine. But I feel like it's been a gradual romance with the Lord, and that develops trust and depth and sincerity and vulnerability. And I feel like it's been more interesting and fun and collaborative getting to know God in that way than it's just pray the prayer and get saved. And it's just, I don't see it that way anymore. I used to. I was a YWAM missionary, and it was about how many people you could get saved, and coming back from a street minister. And I love YWAM. I love Youth with a Mission, but it was very focused on how many people you could get saved.
Right.
Hopefully it's not that way anymore, but who knows? Love you, YWAM, bless you. But there was even a competition almost attached to that. And I just don't see it that way. If we can get to know someone, including the big S someone, over time, and then as we have the capacity, as we receive healing in our heart, then I have the capacity to get to know more aspects and characteristics of who God is. And so the more I get to know him, then he reflects back to me the places that I could get some healing. And it's almost this mirroring thing. I feel like when we open ourselves up to God, in a sense, being a mirror to us, but he does it so lovingly. When I say that mirroring, then I allow him to point those things out to me. And I don't even say point, because I don't feel this from him ever. It's more of a reflection of, I like what Graham Cook, what is missing from your experience with him? Instead of what lie am I believing, or what do I need to change? I see it as, what am I missing? Maybe there's a deficit. Maybe there's a part of my heart that there's a deficit in believing his abundance or his provision or his healing or his love. Most of me believes this with my heart, but then finding this little part when I'm triggered or activated, going, oh, and so then I only experience love. There's never, maybe when I didn't know that part of him, there's like, what do I gotta do? And now it's, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, whoever wants to show up for me today, to bring that part of my heart that doesn't quite believe into agreement with the rest of my heart, so that I can truly be wholehearted and love him.
Yeah, Cathy, you mentioned it earlier, but you used the term encounter your own heart.
That's good.
And what I'm hearing from both of you in your stories, and I think what's been, our experience in rethinking God and growing in these things, is that, Paul said the mystery of the entire good news is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So really encountering Christ at the depth of your own heart, your own brokenness, your own pain, and realizing he's there, he's holding it together. He's ready when you are. One of our guests, Thomas J. Ord, uses the terminology that, love requires consent. It doesn't just force itself on you. And so there's this yielding and consent to the deep work of God in our own heart to bring healing, to have a greater capacity to receive his love. I think that is so key in what I hear you guys doing and helping others in, because how can we love others to a greater degree than we love ourselves or have received God's love for ourselves? And so, and I fully agree with you that the hyper focus on getting people saved was so misdirected. The command was to love people well, and that was actually the evangelism tactic. And somehow it got flipped. And but I think it's coming back in people really understanding and knowing that I'm not going to argue someone into a relationship with the one that loves them the most. I've got to reveal this to them, and they have to have it found in their own heart. So
there are two things that came to mind as you were talking. One of them, you were addressing how we've been so misdirected, misguided, or just not really understanding what it means to go into all the world and preach the gospel is not about getting people saved or praying the prayer. A book that really transformed my thinking about all of this is called The Celtic Way of Evangelism. I do not remember the author off the top of my head, but a friend of mine recommended it to me, The Celtic Way of Evangelism. And the whole thing is about how St. Patrick carried the gospel into Western Europe. And it was all about belonging first. We all desperately want to belong, and we need to belong, and we're created to belong. And that's what Jesus did. He took these guys out of the boats, and no real background or reason other than he chose them, and he invited them to follow me. That was his invitation, follow me. And in the following, they're observing. And in the observing, they're seeing things they've never seen before. And they're coming into belief that this is the Messiah. And some of them it took after the cross and resurrection to actually get it. But St. Patrick in his evangelism, that was the way they did it in Western Europe, was inviting people to come in and do life alongside and watch and observe how we do, and then come into a belief. And the beautiful thing about the book is it actually explains the whole Greek and Roman mindset was you need to look like us, talk like us, act like us, and then we'll let you be one of us. And that was that's the influence that we have here in the West, but that's not how the Celtic people did it. So that book totally undid all of that for me in a really good way. I mean, I marked the book up so much, it was ridiculous. I don't know if you know Ray Hughes. It was his son-in-law. Brian,
yeah.
we were conversation after a worship night I led with them at an encounter thing they did in Asheville, and was talking to Brian about some of the stuff that I was learning. And he's like, oh, that sounds like the Celtic way of evangelism. And I'm like, boom, there it was. And I got the book and read it and marked it all up. And it was like, yes, this screamed, yes, we need to be doing it this way. And it's why St. Patrick was so effective in what he was doing. But something else that you were saying about relationship, or you said love
requires consent.
Love requires consent. Okay, so the way that I have packaged that is that relationship requires choice. If there is no choice in the relationship, it's ownership. It's not relationship. Relationship requires choice. Otherwise, it's ownership. And God wants relationship with us. He does not want ownership of us. And so that is the beauty there. But it has been, I think, what Melinda was saying, this slow cook process of the more time you spend with God, the more you watch him do what he does, the more you learn from him, which is the Celtic way. Come follow me.
Yeah.
Like if we're watching Jesus, and especially in the model that we use for heart healing, it's called the Emmanuel Approach, and it is based on God with us, and there's brain science involved with that. And one of the things that's kind of new to the scene, I'm actually currently reading although I've heard about it forever. I'm actually reading it I'm doing the audio and reading and marking up the book by Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, about trauma and how trauma affects the brain and all of that. And just understanding how all of that impacts us. And there's all these new discoveries and new things that we're able to see because of technology into the 90s and 2000s. And one of the things they've discovered is mirror neurons, how you can watch somebody do something and actually learn it by watching them, and you mimic what you're seeing and observing. And the mirror neurons are things God put in us. It's hardwired from the factory. And so when Jesus says, follow me, he's banking on, hey, I know these guys are going to use their mirror neurons are going to be firing. They're watching me and they're going to learn and become more like me by being around me and watching me do what I do. We get to do that when we facilitate an inner healing session using those tools. We're watching Jesus work in someone's life. We're hearing what Jesus is saying to somebody else. We're observing him do what only he can do. And we're learning and becoming more like him. You talk about a discipleship model. Watch Jesus.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, because
like
he's
it.
wired in us a way to watch and become.
Yeah.
That you've just articulated the tagline of our church, which is belonging to a family and becoming like Jesus. That struck us
There you
years
go.
ago about belonging first. And my wife loves that book, Your Body Keeps the Score. She's familiar with the Emmanuel Approach. Maybe that'd be a good place to go, is to explain a little bit about the healing approach. I mean, not to get too nerdy, but just heard about these, the neuroplasticity of how we can literally rewire our brains. The renewing of the mind is a legitimate, real physiological process. I mean, if you've been traveling a certain way in your thinking, in your brain, we have a big highway here in Charlotte, 77, and everybody knows where 77 is, and they're up and down on it, north and south. And if that's all you've ever known, you just default to that. But we can rewire, and create a loop of 485 is our new loop. It got built, and now you can loop all around Charlotte. You can get the same place, but take a different path neurologically. I get crazy geeky about this stuff, but I read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, and that started opening the door for me to realize, okay, we have this subconscious level that is always guiding us, and that's what needs to be yielding and consenting to love, and let love guide us. That's the layman's terms right there for the best I could do as a pastor. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear more about that Emmanuel approach.
The Emmanuel approach too. I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted you to share more on that. Yeah.
Well, I want to go back.
Yeah,
Can
we
you hear
gotcha.
me? All right. I want to go back to the how do you encounter your heart? Because that question was just totally blown offline, and it's too important to me to not circle back to that. And of course, everything connects to everything, because we could talk about quantum physics too, that there's no separation and everything is connected, everybody. But if you can't encounter and know your own heart, you really can't know the heart of Jesus. That's what I really believe. And Jason, back to your question about my own healing, I cannot answer that without also adding what has been so profoundly impacting for me over the past 2 years specifically is meditation. And I know this may sound heretical to some, but it's not meditation on the Bible. It's not meditation on verses, because I have a lot of verses in my head. Did it actually bring transformation? No. Do affirmations and declarations bring transformation? No. That's not brains, because and I know it's going to ruffle some feathers, and I don't mind ruffling feathers. And if you have a problem, don't talk to Jason, come to me. Or I actually should say, talk to Derek, don't come to me, or one of them. But why is it not working? We've done all these declarations, we've done affirmations, we do all this, I am this, I am that, identity statements. And I did that for years, and there's no deep heart transformation. There might be a little bit, but there's not a lot. And if I believe that Jesus is in my heart, if I put that in quote unquote, then why do I need to make all these identity statements and then I don't actually believe it? Because there's some disconnect with what I'm saying and what I actually believe in my heart. What is actually in my heart? And I think a lot of people, Christians, have been afraid because there's this scripture, is it Proverbs, that the heart is deceptive.
Right.
And so they're like, I can't go into my own heart. It's evil. Right. And I'm like, but wait a minute. Jesus doesn't exist. The perfect light of Jesus doesn't exist with darkness. So if he's in your heart, how could he be in your heart if it's deceptive and dark? Yeah. We don't think about these things. I think that a lot of us have believed, and I grew up in the church, Presbyterian, and then I got charismatic and Anglican, and I've done everything in between. And there's kind of a similar through line that if you just choose to believe this thing, then this, and it just isn't true the way that our brains are wired, the way that we're created. And so the more that I have spent actually in silence and in deep breathing, I tell you, sitting for 5 minutes doing deep breathing will get you to connect it to your heart if you're willing to go into silence and not even focus on anything, but just focus on your breath. And I'll do a whole teaching on that some other time, not on your podcast. But
I like it though. Some Dispenza stuff here now.
Well, and you did say, P.S., who is your teacher? And Dr. Joe Dispenza is. And
okay, I like it.
That's a whole other story too. I'm glad that you know who I'm talking about, Jason, and that you said his name first. So I'm very, very, very influenced by him. And but I think that a lot of Christians have been afraid to look inwards. No, we just got to look upwards. Like, wait a minute. Where is God? Again, bringing it back to that. I invited Jesus into my heart. Then why am I looking outward? And it becomes almost a codependent Jesus. Like, I got to look out there. And if he doesn't say yes, then I'm not doing it. And it just depends on what he says. It's like, well, wait a minute. Let's go into our own heart if he is there. And so with Emmanuel Approach, and I can morph into Emmanuel Approach. But because it is based on brain science and changing our brain. And as you said, Derek, that how do we, Romans 12:1, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It doesn't say be transformed by the memorizing of scripture. It doesn't say be transformed by making affirmations. It says by the renewing of your mind. And that is the changing of your mind. And the only way to change your mind, I believe, is doing the kind of work we're doing meditation and having the revelation of who Jesus is, and then practicing it over and over again, like a cow chewing their cud. And that's what changes the neural pathways, is getting out of the rut of this is how I've always seen God. And it's not always comfortable, y'all. This is not just like 1, 2, 3, do these steps and you'll be fine and your thoughts will change. It's not, and it's not even about getting from head to heart. It's about getting from heart to head, actually, because we have all these beliefs in our heart, but we don't actually believe what we believe in our heart, if that makes sense. So an Emmanuel Approach is, instead of a lot of counseling or therapeutic practices start with what's your problem, what's your pain point, and then let's pray for you or cast it out or deliver or whatever. And those things are all important. But the way that it's based on brain science is I start with, hey, share with me. And first, just a tuning with the person, share with me a happy memory that you have, a positive experience where you have felt appreciation. And maybe you haven't felt appreciation. Maybe you don't even know what that means. So share with me an experience in your life. And it could be just, I took a walk in the nature park yesterday and saw a beautiful purple tree. Okay, let's sit with that. And now I'm going to guide you through connecting with all 5 senses. That's very important. What did you smell? What did you hear? What did you taste? What did you feel? How did your body feel? What could you see? And actually letting yourself feel appreciation, because appreciation has a feeling, has emotion attached to it. And then once they're in that place and they have a body memory of it, because the right brain doesn't process time. And so I'm back, my right brain's going, we're back in that place, even yesterday or 10 years ago, and can bring up all the same feelings. The feel-good chemicals are released again. And from that place, I'm feeling appreciation. Now we say we believe that Jesus is always with me. Okay, so would you be willing to then make an invitation to Jesus, help me be aware of your living interactive presence with
Good.
me in this
Yeah.
moment? And the
Yeah.
reason we start with the positive and not tell me your deepest, darkest trauma is when I tell you my deepest, darkest trauma, first of all, I'm probably re-experiencing it, probably start releasing the cortisol and adrenaline, start going back to that fight, flight, freeze place in my brain. And I cannot have a relational connection, or it's a lot harder to have a relational connection with anybody if I'm in that fear center. And so we start in the front of our brain, the relational center. And from that place of connection with Jesus in a positive memory, then that's building capacity to go to something that's more painful. But I start with him and there's a lot more complexity, but that's actually the simple way of describing it is start with a positive memory. Jesus, show me where you are in this memory, and then whatever he wants to do. Now, what healing do you have for me today, Jesus? But we've already established this. Okay, he's with me and he's really glad to be with me. And we can sit in that for months and years. Talk about establishing identity. This is not making an affirmation statement that somebody gave me to read. It's Jesus is telling me what he feels about me in this moment. I'm not, as the practitioner, telling you, saying, I really feel God says that he loves you, that he's proud of you, but Jesus, how do you feel about being with me in this moment? And Jesus, what's your favorite food while we're at it? And from that place, having that, you talk about
Fish.
having that relational connection. Like Jesus, yeah, not what he's told me. Like we've gotten down to the nitty gritty. Like, do you like IPAs, Jesus? And which one do you like? And then I've had people go, no, he's a lager man, and others are like, beer and Jesus, no. But we could talk about
He's a
that on
voodoo
another
ranger
podcast.
from New Belgium because he rose from the dead.
Thank you. Thank you.
There you go.
I mean, have we asked him, Jesus, what's your favorite taco? And do you have any taco stories? But that's how real this relational connection with Jesus gets.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this, I got to do this to get into God's presence.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time doing that. I got to find out God's will.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Almost in its constipated state.
Yeah. Desperation used to be how I measured my spiritual maturity.
How desperate am I?
How desperate am I today? You know, we have songs that were developed. What I said earlier, those moments of encounter are the moments where I've encountered kindness. You talk about it's kindness that leads to repentance. It is kindness that changes. And you're talking about the ultimate kindness of seeing yourself through the lens of how your Father, how Jesus sees you. And what that does, I remember when the most transformative, you know, my life has been like yours, Melinda. It's been more a journey, but I have moments, these aha moments. And one of them was when God told me I wasn't allowed to perceive myself through any other lens than through his. And it was a call to repentance that was so kind and so transformative. But I think what you're touching on that I love is there is a theological piece here. If you're raised under sin and you're such a desperate, wicked, horrific, because for me, some of the great shifts that took place was it is mind, body, heart. So it's all of you, and your head's getting it as well. And when I was able to realize that I'm prone to love, you know, that was the book I wrote, that we are all created in his image and likeness, righteous, prone to love, that the lie of disconnection and separation didn't even originate. The original sin didn't even originate in the mind of man. It was an outside lie that came in. We were actually created and we belong, and we were actually created in his image. When you get that off your lens, then you're able to do the things you're talking about. I've done this. I have my lay down, imagine myself back with my wife, my brothers, where we have $1,000 that we dropped in Jerusalem after we'd done a shoot. This was about 6 years ago. And the whole crew was there, and we dropped $1,000 sitting over the Jerusalem as the sun set. We sat for 4 hours and just ate everything, and we did shots with our waiter, and we just it was. And so I've done this dispensa where I lay down and I say, Father, let me just relive that with you. There was enough. There was everything was full. I was with my loved ones. I do that there's memories that you pull back, and I go back there with Jesus to reset and recalibrate. in that moment. I'll do it in the morning, but that's like one of my moments that I relive, that I go, because I just such a beautiful, magical experience where all the things are clicking, and then I interact. Okay, now let's talk about some of the needs I have today. Let's talk about some of the, because now I'm doing it from this measureless resource, this wellspring of life within me, from our union. Am I hitting on it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I love your language, and I love that's the thing about this is that I love that there's different languages for kind of the similar thing, and even outside the church, dare I say it, Joe Dispenza is not inside the church.
Sure.
In a way, thank God,
Yeah.
because let's just say that
He starts with
because
goodness and kindness. He
yes,
starts with love.
and that is who God is.
Yeah, that's great.
And we haven't really, what I've heard a lot of, I'm actually gaining more about God outside of the church. I'm not saying I'm going to I'm not a Satanist or something. I'm just saying that there's a lot of truth to be held and a lot of truth to learn outside of what we have, in a way, restricted ourselves to learn from.
Sure.
And I think that there's been a lot of fear around that. But at the end of the day, if it sounds like love, if it sounds like greater love, if it sounds like who God really is, then it is God.
Mm-hmm.
And it may come in a different package, but the more that I open myself up to that, then the more I am learning how limitless God is.
Yeah.
And how he transcends the way this person looks, or they're from this country, they must not be Christian, or they must not know who Jesus is. I mean, there's such an explosion of the boxes and I think that there's many, 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 it's not just one box we put God in, and there's many compartments and categories. And so how you said it is like, yeah, we're on the same wavelength here. And when I resonate with something that a teacher says, it's like, oh my goodness, that's it. And God's revealing this to everybody. It's not just the pastor standing up at a church on Sunday, even the most well-known famous people that draw 20,000 people.
Sure.
It's all over the world because he wants people to know his goodness and his heart and his character. And it's just may be spoken, it may be revealed, it may be communicated in different ways, but at the heart of it is perfect love, is greater love.
Yeah. Guys, my book is out, Leaving and Finding Jesus. If you've already read it, I would be so grateful if you would go to Amazon and write a review. This actually helps the rankings. It also helps people trust the book before they buy it. Thankful for you for that. And also so thankful for all the support that's come in over the last little bit. We're just blown away, blessed by folks' generosity. A Family Story is a nonprofit. This is a listener-supported podcast. And we're just so grateful to be on the journey with you. Guys, I'm so thankful for you. Praying life and joy and wonder over you today. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
Well, the Apostle John wrote, in his letter, anyone who loves knows God. That's pretty broad. That's anyone. And it literally means anyone who loves knows God.
Good.
And so, people maybe don't put it in a package that says, oh, that's Jesus. I'm going to direct line that one to Jesus. But I think we as his followers have need to better serve people in becoming like Jesus so that we can share that good news that, this light that you're seeing, this happy place that you're going to, I think it all comes down to, a lot of it comes down to attachment issues, where at some point as a kid, you were not, and someone was not pleased that you were in their presence. And, getting back to that original goodness instead of focusing on original sin, I think that's been the big mistake of the evangelical church. And, God's all about original goodness. He's pleased to reveal himself to anyone and everyone, whether they acknowledge that that's him or not. That's the road to Emmaus experience. So I love what you guys, because you're giving language to these things and helping people encounter. I have new language now for the happy place. It's like Happy Gilmore, when when he went to that happy place, man, everything changed. He got back on track, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
That was
His
so
happy
thick
place was
in
a
my
little
head.
odd,
I
but
had to get it out.
that's awesome. Let's talk about this a little bit here, because I've been thumbing my way through it. Thank you for my copy. I like having a
No, you're welcome.
physical
Yeah.
copy. It's a compilation. I know a lot of the people in here that you guys talk to, whether it's the Frosts or the De Silvas, all the different modalities, all the different ways in which we're coming into healing. But share a little bit about this book, and maybe in light of what we've been talking about.
Yeah. So we were at a women's retreat back in 2018, September 2018. A friend of mine had invited us to come to her church for a women's retreat, and she had a team of about 10 that were like prayer ministers. And she asked us to meet with them after the event was over to talk about inner healing. And because Melinda's had the beautiful heritage of having exposure to all of these other models, and then she invited me into that connection to all of these models, just from the culture where she was trained and originally got exposed to all that, the models themselves. Uh, we were sharing, Melinda's sharing about all of these models with them, and they're like heads blown, and they're like, is there a centralized resource for this, for all these models? And there wasn't. And she said, you need to write a book. And Melinda's response was what? Melinda?
Hell no. No, I didn't say, I can say that here, right?
Yeah, that's all.
No, I was like, don't like writing.
Yeah.
But I took it to the Lord though. I really did. And the first word that came into my mind was film. And I had a background in that, and I had the equipment, and that led to, then I just invited, I have no fear of asking people things like, how'd you get all these interviews? And I asked,
Right.
hello.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. And people are like, oh my gosh, you approached Heidi Baker? Yes, I did. She's a person. So I just started one by one asking these people. Donna De Silva was my first yes, actually.
Okay.
And God just lined it up. So our first, 20, 30 interviews, Kathy? Are
The
they
whole first season, I don't know,
lot?
Your
61
podcast.
episodes.
This is
Yeah.
the podcast, face
We're
to face.
Well,
filmed.
let me tell
Yeah.
you why. Well, they were filmed, but we couldn't get them edited and out. Like, we didn't have the time. We were just getting all these interviews.
They
And
were
so we had,
filmed in person. It
yeah,
wasn't Zoom. Like we went
yeah,
to people's houses, into their
Right.
churches, their
yeah.
offices.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some friends of mine had started a podcast and they co-hosted it. And I thought, we can do that. It's a quick release for audio. And so I stripped the audio from all the video footage that we had and started producing the podcast. It launched in March of 2019.
Yeah.
But all of season 1, there's 61 episodes. Think Isaiah, ironically, Isaiah 61 mandate to heal the brokenhearted. And
Cool.
all of those people were done in person and filmed. So, but the thing back here is write a book, but we're doing this we think we're doing this film project, but we don't have the ability to actually get it all edited. And now we're releasing audio, and it eventually turned back around because we invited most of these people that, like, top of pyramid people, like the founders and leaders of the key models that pretty much everything else has grown out of. And we invited them to come together and be in person at a retreat. Like, we called it the Healer Gathering. And it happened in Hendersonville, North Carolina in 2020.
Wow.
In
During
2020.
COVID.
And we had 18 people come in person, and then we had 5 that showed up on Zoom. And it was just like, we don't know what this is supposed to be, but there's power in unity, and we want you to get to know each other. We know and love all of you. Come together. And they did. And they paid their own way there. And there were 2 ministries that co-sponsored the event. And so all they paid was their travel. But out of that, in the middle of that event, they all decided, we want to be an alliance. Like, we want to link arms. Like, that's the vision that Melinda had, was linking arms.
That's so cool.
The Kilstras, who founded Restoring the Foundations, we had conversation with them. They had that vision. And so the Healer Gathering's been happening now 3 years, and we're doing it again this 4th year coming up. But because we had them all together in person, we talked about this book project, and they were all willing to do it. And they offered, instead of us having to decipher everything that was on video and transcribe it, they offered to write their own chapters. So this is like super win-win, because each of the founders and leaders is writing in their own voice from their perspective of having founded the model, giving you a description of who they are, what they do, why they do it, the history, and some testimonies of people who have benefited from that. And then that's a great plan, but I'm still overwhelmed with this project. We're like, how do we do this? And through, I'll just tell you, through an Instagram contest won by somebody to have a meeting with Donna Da Silva, that connection gave us our editor, and she helped us compile and make it all make sense.
That's cool.
But our goal was to bring a centralized resource together. Randy Clark is using the book as part of the doctoral program at Global Awakening, and they have just ordered books for their bookstore. So that's like a huge accomplishment that they're seeing the value in it as well. So there is now a centralized resource of the key models, and those authors are in relationship with each other, and more
That's
of
so
them.
cool.
So yeah, and it's kind of it's not under wraps. We're telling you about it. It's not like it's a secret society or anything, but it's something that's specifically designed for the apostolic leaders who are training and equipping and releasing people trained in the models that they have founded. That's the peer group that is connecting relationally right now. And who knows where it goes from here,
That's so amazing.
God's got something going on, and we're saying yes to it. And, big ideas and plans and thoughts for what it could become down the road. But for right now, it's a safe place for the apostolic leaders of these movements to be cared for and loved on and encouraged and supported.
That's really cool. We had, it reminds me, I think I shared it last time, but I had a prophetic word years ago about an archipelago, a series of islands, and that we were an island, but that there was a connecting bridges that were taking place. The prophetic word was one in which I was an island, and I was like, yeah, it feels like it. But then no, wait, there's a series of islands, an archipelago, and now I see bridges actually connecting. And then we had someone on, Catherine Toon mentioned about how it's actually under the water already connected, and that the bridges are the manifestation of what's taking place. And suddenly you have this resource and that resource, and I see that happening. And that Derek kind of hinted at it, that we see all these places that have been stewarding wholeness, health, life, the goodness of God, kindness, all the languages are the ways in which we've articulated and defined. And yet I feel like we are in a season where I'm seeing connections take place. So I hear that. And I even see the prophetic nature of what you're talking about, and very much love that.
I mean, Jason and I talked about this on a couple podcasts ago, but when he mentioned the island, metaphor, I had someone prophesy, it was actually my mom, about the connections that would come, but it was more like an aspen grove. Everything was already connected underground. And this giant organism, which was already connected in a life-giving system underground, was popping up these trees and sprouts all over the place, and they were seeing each other and connecting, on the surface. A lot of imagery, but I see that happening now with people that are thinking the way we are about God, and we're believing the way God is thinking about us. That's the great Tozer C.S. Lewis debate. Tozer said that, what you think about God is the most important thing about you. And C.S. Lewis came back and said, what God thinks about you is the most important thing about you. And they're both right. The answer is yes. Both of those are the correct answers. And so I think a restoration of original goodness, a destruction of the myth of separation, and an increase in an openness to collaborate and work and come together around empathy, and look, none of us are fully there, obviously, yet, but it just seems like there's this irresistible magnetic force that's drawing all these people together, and I can't help but think that it's just being orchestrated on a grander scale that we can't even comprehend. And when you mentioned like quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff, we had Steve McVeigh on a while back, and I'm just convinced that everything is connected. Everything. Of course, I'm an ultimate reconciliationist as well. So I'm at least a hopeful inclusionist. We haven't worked that one out yet. I'm working on
Yeah,
that. But yeah, I mean, I
it's
see
too
what
late.
you
You
guys
said
are
it, man. It's out
doing,
there now.
and it doesn't have the vibe of Western evangelical church on it, and yet it is 100% in the heart of Jesus to be gathering and doing these things. I just want to be a part of it. I love it. I want to be a part of it. And as a pastor, I'm trying to find new modalities of even how we gather, why we gather. I've said this a couple times on the podcast, but I'm getting a little tired of the concert and the TED talk. I want to wrangle and wrestle with things that will help
Come
us,
on.
become more like Jesus, and in a belonging atmosphere where there's safety and no fear of retribution or anger or, certainty. So one quick thought, and then I want to turn it back to you guys. But I was listening to Randall Worley recently, and he said, and I think this is a good, I'm hearing this from you guys, and Jason and I have talked about this before, but he said when he lost his fear of being deceived, that's when he was opened up to the reality of finding God everywhere, finding love everywhere. And I think that's been a big part of our evangelical culture, particularly our American church culture, is just so fearful of being deceived that you can't explore the
Oh,
beauty of everything. So, yeah, do you want to speak to that?
Derek, I mean, I think,
Did I?
Touch
I'm
the
sorry.
nerve,
golly,
You
Derek.
need
can
to go
I
back
just
to your
say
happy
something? I
place.
have to say,
Okay.
no. You're the first person that has actually said that. I thought I was the one, like, what do they call it? Banging against the goat or something. I don't know, but I just feel like that's not the right. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, like, you do meditation with Dr. Joe Dispenza? Yes. And I went to his week-long retreat. Yes. Was it life-changing? Yes. Did I meet Jesus? Deeper place? Yes. And I could actually share some transformational moments from there. And it wasn't at a Christian thing. And so, Derek, for you to say that, I am completely refreshed. Let's go have a drink, because I really haven't, because I feel like if you're fearing deception, you're already in deception. And think about what that even says. If I fear being deceived, I've already given permission for fear to come in.
Yeah.
I don't want to be deceived. Well,
Yeah.
where is this coming from? If we're making decisions out of either fear or love, if
There you go.
everything in our life, and I think that those two things are, and of course they're manifest in all sorts of ways, then wow, you've already opened the door to fear and deception, because you just agreed with fear of deception. Like, I'm afraid of being deceived. Think about what you just said. I'm afraid. What did Jesus say? What did God say all throughout the Bible? Don't be afraid. So I could get my preach on. I am a closet preacher, and sometimes she
Come
comes
on,
out,
bring it.
because Derek, I'm like,
I'm
thank
gonna
you,
need an
high
usher
five,
in here.
high
I'm
10.
gonna fall out.
I thought you were going to say bring an usher and pass around the
No, man, we're
basket.
gonna do
Right.
like full on
Okay,
modesty
$100
talk when I
bills, but
fall
you're
out.
talking about you're going to fall over.
I don't know if all our new listeners are going to get that
Yeah.
reference, but you never know. They can look it up.
Oh no, I think
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've been to every kind of meeting you can imagine. Yes.
I love it.
Oh. Yeah, and it comes down to, do we or do we not trust the light inside of us?
That's it. That's
You
it.
know?
Yeah.
And we had some we were kind of looking in a particular direction to perhaps try to have a representation of the Emmanuel approach in a context that was kind of pretty liberal and not really a place you would think to find it. And we had mentioned it to a couple of people, and somebody came back and said, that's really liberal. And I thought, isn't that the place we should be? I mean, should we not be where people are hungry? Why can't we be the ones to provide them with a true encounter with Jesus? If they're looking for God in all the wrong places,
Yeah.
how can we not
Yeah.
be a representation of the true light of Jesus in the midst of that? Because actually, I think that crowd is easier to win over than the religious people, because the religious people are afraid, or they are just, not so sure, not as open, or they have the whole
Yeah.
certainty thing
I
down.
think the
Like they're
certainty thing
certain.
is a big issue, and that's why sometimes I think I have better encounters, at trivia night at the tap room in my neighborhood with my neighbors
Yeah.
than, with
Yeah.
trying to get help. But that's a big part of what we're trying to help people with is rethinking,
Yeah.
unlearning is
Yeah.
Right.
so
Yeah.
hard. I mean, especially when you've had
Yeah.
respected leaders in your life that are, of a religious orientation, pastors, voices that, maybe you got few good things out of it, but man, maybe there was a lot of retribution and a lot of anger and a lot of dualistic
Yeah.
views of God. But to me, what
Mhm.
awakens hearts to the reality of what they already have is love,
Yeah. Come
pure,
on.
unadulterated love
Yeah.
that is gonna
Yeah.
say, "I'm glad to be with you," and bring that trust back. I just find more encounters like that. I had a guy this morning.
Yeah.
I was walking my dog, and I don't know, maybe I don't know. I always have these encounters when I'm walking my dog, but he was down there and he was fishing at a pond nearby, and a big burly guy, full camo, and I hadn't seen him before. He looked like he was a new guy, and I just went down, started talking to him. How you doing? You catching anything? Oh, there's some big ones in there, man. You got this. And his next statement to me was, "My mom died last night." And my heart just
Oh man.
broke, and I was like, "Brother, let's talk about it. Are you okay?" And he's just, people are open. They are so open to the love of God, and
Mhm.
I want to carry that, into every individual relationship that I encounter, because I think that's what being like and following Jesus is all about. So I don't know why that came up in my head.
Yeah.
It impacted me
Yeah.
so deeply. This guy just being so
Well,
open right away, and I was like, man, immediately my heart was, man, let me help you carry this burden. Let me help you. I want to carry some of this for you. I want to carry some of the grief and pain right now. So, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I sense such a goodness and an empathy
Yeah.
in this discussion, and I know our listeners are going to just want to start pounding your guys' podcasts, because
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
they
for
should.
real.
They should.
yeah.
I love what happens when what happened in Christ actually is greater than what happened in Adam.
Come on.
And
Yeah.
so it's what you're talking about. It's what gives us the freedom, Melinda, to be able to go somewhere and not be worried about being deceived. If greater love, as Jesus revealed it, our is our measurement, or the things by which we measure. I think Randall said it this way: if we love God more, love ourselves more, and love each other more, then we're getting it right. That's the gospel right there, and that's safe. And that's safe because what Jesus did is more powerful than what Adam did. And so suddenly we're not having to play this game. What you said, Cathy, light doesn't have to do push-ups.
Mhm.
Light just shows up and there is no darkness.
Right.
And so instead of being afraid of the darkness, we just become immersed in the light.
Yeah.
And now we're not striving. We're not having to, and it's safe. It's safe to be in your skin in the moment. I mean, what you're talking about, Derek, is that suddenly you're present,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
you're not even having to handle any of the hiccups that I might have had to handle in my early 20s if I'd met someone whose mom had died. I know empathy would have gushed out of me then, but I would have still been tangled with how to help them navigate. Do they know Jesus? Like that would still be
Right.
that front question on my mind, like it'd be
Mhm.
guiding me somehow, instead of how do I just be present and be Jesus in
Yeah.
this moment? How do I be light in this moment?
Yeah. Well, what I would like to encourage all of the listeners to do is to step back further than the last couple hundred years. Like if you start exploring the Desert Fathers and more of the early church and what they believed, and there's some key people that came along the scene and shifted everything simply because of their own bias.
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that we will like, we're going to die for this particular thing, is not what the early church even believed. There has been influence along the way, and even in translations of the Bible, there have been biases in place in some of them, and we have to go back. And that was one of the things that was very freeing for me. Was I did a year-long Bible school that really explored what the whole of the scripture through the lens of covenants, and understanding what the new covenant actually means, and actually giving some framework for why we believe some of the things that we believe. And it's not because it's what Jesus said, it's because it's how somebody interpreted it or twisted it along the way. And so I just feel like we've become so certain on things because we've got this current history, even the past couple hundred years. But did they always believe this in the church?
Right.
I'm not sure they did. Let's go back a little bit and
Yeah.
see.
That's great advice.
We got some
Great
brilliant
advice.
people helping us do that right now. Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Guys,
It's too good, man.
we can do this a while, I think.
I know, right?
Each one of us is like, no, I got something I could say.
Hey,
This is good.
They
This
did
is really
a two-parter with you, Jason. I think we need to do a two-parter with them.
Yeah, we could do it.
I think we could. Well,
Yep.
I do think we got to talk tacos too, though.
Oh, yeah.
Anything about food, yes. Yeah, in fact, I'm really hungry. I was just thinking about, this is going to make me way hungry. I was just thinking about, what am I going to eat after? Because I came in from jogging before and didn't get a chance to eat. But it's funny, I was thinking the two taco places that are my favorite both have an animal in them. I don't understand that. The White Duck Taco, which is in Asheville and in Greenville.
Yes.
And then Taco Billy, and it's a billy goat. And that's in Black Mountain and Asheville. This is North Carolina, South Carolina.
I have been to both.
You've been to both? Oh my gosh. So have you had the one that has the shell is made from sweet potato?
No.
And so, oh my gosh, it's revolutionary. If you're gluten-free, you can have these tacos, or grain-free. So, and it's a fantastic, it's hearty. And then their chips and queso. So forget that goes there out the door, the dairy and grain-free thing. But have those are my two favorite taco places. And I've eaten a lot of tacos.
Duck taco too.
And they do all sorts of interesting innards.
Yeah.
I mean, a sweet potato tortilla with like, I can't even think, broccoli. Ew, no. Kale, no. Like chicken and black beans.
There you go.
It's not just like shredded beef and Kraft cheese. No. Or, ground beef and Kraft. That is not a taco.
No.
So more of these upscale gourmet tacos, and they're all made fresh at the place, and like organic ingredients. So
I love it.
Taco Billy and White Duck Taco.
I love it. Taco Billy.
And they're not paying me for this. Dang it.
I know. We should really get endorsement.
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
Especially White Duck. I will totally vote for White Duck. And they have a Thai peanut chicken taco there. And I love how White Duck will give you 2 corn tortillas and then overload the top. So when you eat the top, the guts all fall out and you end up with 2 because they put so much for one, but they give you a second one to finish what you can't fit at the first one. So yeah, for real, those, I totally vote for White Duck Taco, and the Thai peanut ones are great.
Yes. I just drooled on my mic.
Yes, I've had that too.
Derek, you're a mess. We need somebody to come with the modesty cloth, and now you're drooling.
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, my wife and I will meet you guys in Asheville any day of the week. We love Asheville, and so
all right,
that's a go-to for us.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah. We're headed there in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
Good stuff. Hey, how do we find you? How do we get our hands on the book? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to. I know you're.
Well, we're going to UK in 2 weeks to run 2 dashaways, but we also, what we both are, I can speak for both of us, passionate about in training people in Emanuel Approach. And I mean, how else do you equip people unless you're training them and then equipping? And it's so hands-on that we really, both of us love to do in-person trainings. And because of the nature of the training, it's it is much more enjoyable and effective doing it in person. Yes, we have online training, digital training as well, and that's wonderful. But actually so churches will hire us, or groups of people will hire us to do a 1 or 2, even 3-day equipping and training in Emmanuel Approach, where you get to experience this. It's not just talking heads. As much as I love teaching, it's training, it's practice, it's watching demos and getting a ton of healing yourself during the training. And then we also run these dashaways for women. And so when we can be in person, that is like the passion of my heart. And so people can hire us, bring us in to do Emmanuel Approach trainings. And we've said yes to Dr. Carl Lehman. He's the founder. He's a psychiatrist. So this is legit, y'all. The Emmanuel Approach was actually developed by a psychiatrist and a medical doctor. He's got a 700-page book. He's done tons of case studies and research for decades on this, and the efficacy of it is proven over and over and over again, and getting people healed from all sorts of trauma in a much shorter amount of time than going to the psychiatrist or counselor's office for decades or years. Yeah. And again, not naysaying that, but for sure, just seeing how the brain works. And so we do live in-person trainings on that. We do online mentoring and coaching in that. We also have a team that does one-on-one inner healing, heart healing, usually on Zoom. And then we're developing some other things that are really exciting. We'd love to, if any of this piqued your interest, then reach out, please.
Yeah. If you go to face-to-face-ministries.org, face-to-face, all spelled out, no numbers, face-to-face-ministries.org. If you click on the healing tab, we've got our healing prayer ministers calendars there. On our homepage, scroll down about halfway, you can get access to the book. It's available on Amazon. And get on our newsletter list, because we're about to launch a really robust, year-long, very thorough training for people that might feel called to help other people connect to Jesus in this way and bring healing.
Let me just say, you guys both had me at Emmanuel. We could have just stopped there, but thank you for describing it on a deeper scale. I'm actually convinced there's somebody in our church, a trained clinical psychologist, that is trained in this Emmanuel Approach. I'm going to have to ask her, but I know my wife's familiar with it. But now that I know you guys, I think you need to come to Charlotte. What do you think, Jason? We do a little Emmanuel Approach at River Church.
Let's do it.
You be down with that?
We got totally
here too. I love this. I am so down with this. We have this
not far away either.
I'm glad that you mentioned the clinical psychologist, because what we're seeing is that people who are trained in traditional therapies, when they incorporate even just the opening piece of the Emmanuel Approach, it makes what they do so much easier, quicker, more predictable results, shorter amount of time. Even just incorporating the initial basic tool set at the front of what they do in a traditional therapy setting, it changes. We've been training people, and they are telling us that it's really effective.
Love it. Yeah.
That's amazing. This is good. This is a very helpful.
Hey, what about the socials? Are you guys on the socials? Can we give your at signs?
Yeah, sure. Facebook, it's face-to-face-ministries.org. It's just our website on the end of that slug. And then face-to-face-min on Instagram.
Very cool. Go find them.
Yeah, come on.
Love it.
Yeah, right, and you can contact us through the website if you want, if you're interested in a training. We love doing what we're doing. I think you can tell.
Yeah, and you're good at it. You're really good at it. And thank you so much for being on Tacos today.
Thanks.
Absolute delight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Where are the tacos, Jason, that you promised that would come in express mail? Someone knocking on the door right now.
You're breaking up.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, I'm not.
Hey guys, so glad you joined us in Rethinking God with Tacos. You can find me, Jason Clark, online at afamilystory.org, where I encourage you to sign up on our mailing list. We send out an email twice a month letting you know about new podcasts, articles, and new books or products that we have coming out. Plus, occasionally I'll keep you up on my schedule where I'm traveling. My Twitter handle is @JasonClarkIs. I'm on Instagram under the same handle, and you can find me on Facebook as well.
Yeah, and my name is Derek Turner. Jason and I love that you're listening to us. Thank you for all your feedback. Please write in, let us know what's going on in your life. But we are pursuing a mission to help people rethink God, and we thank you for being a part of it. You can find me at Pastor Derek T on all the socials. And then, of course, I pastor a church here in Charlotte, North Carolina called River Church, rivercharlotte.com. Come and join us. We'd love to have you.
Hey, all of these podcasts are available on all the platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google.
Yeah. Hey, make sure and like, share, and throw a review out there.
Let people know.
We love good reviews on the podcast. It helps people find us.
That's right.
So if this isn't a podcast that you enjoy, then please promote it, share it, give it a good 5-star rating.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Hey, love doing this journey with you. Praying grace and wonder over you today.